Hi, and welcome to video number 2. My name's Pete Benson, and I'm your host, and going to be presenting some great information here today on COVID-19 crisis in your personal finances. Now, this video series, there's 3. This is number 2. I hope you got to view number 1, but if you didn't, the things that I talked about there, if I can just summarize very, very quickly, is number 1, if you're up against it or think you might be and really need to tighten your belt financially, you need to take action. There's work. Don't become paralyzed. Don't panic. Pray and be productive. That's what you need to do. So, as we got into that, I talked about the importance of praying every single day about your finances. You really need to do this every single day, maybe several times a day. Don't worry, pray. That's what the Bible says. Do not be anxious about anything, but by prayer and supplication, let your requests be made known unto Him. You need to do this. It's sad, but many Christians worry more about finances than they do pray about their finances. So if that's convicting, it's meant to be. So pray about your financial situation because God cares deeply. But He wants you to ask, He wants you to pray. The second thing that you need to do is make sure that you don't stop giving. If you are a generous person and you believe that you need to be giving to God's work and to charity and these kind of things, do not stop doing that. That is not the answer to your financial crisis and situation. God can do more with what's left over after we've been generous than we could do with 10 times the full amount. So keep that in mind. Do not stop giving. I believe that God will be there, will be beside you, and help you during that situation as you honor Him. Again, the question is not how much of my money am I ever giving to God, but how much of God's money, because it's all His. How much of God's money will I keep for myself to live on? And so then as we got into it, I talked about the importance of treating your family finances like a business. Over a lifetime, that business, your family, could bring in $2 million, $3 million, $5 million, for some families, well in excess of $7 to $10 million over their lifetime. $50,000 a year times 60 years is $3 million. So if someone gave you $3 million, would you think that it's really important to have a budget, to track the expenses, to make sure that you were a good steward of that? Absolutely. The fact that that money comes in over a lifetime, week by week or bi-weekly or monthly, is no different. We are responsible to be good stewards of all of that. So right now in the midst of this crisis, some of you are hurting badly financially. Some of you just a little bit, some not hardly at all. But unfortunately, your day may come. I believe that the significant financial ramifications and problems that are going to incur, some of them are coming down the road in the next few weeks and months. Some who have not lost their job yet, and sadly, millions have. But some who have not will lose it, or they're going to become underemployed. They may be still employed, but they're making less. Once the stimulus and all that has been injected and they're done doing that, then you're on your own, and you may be living on 80% as much money as you were before, 70, 60, 50, sadly even less. So you need to learn to do more with what you have left over. So one of the first things I talked about last week, in the last video, was the importance of doing an audit on your outgo of expenses. Once you do that, it will be eye-opening to you. And the way you do that is you take your credit card bills and your bank statements, and they will show you where your money is being spent. And you need to identify those things that maybe, just maybe, probably, you don't really need to have in your budget. And so you begin to eliminate or reduce a lot of those expenses. And as you do, you can find the money. What I've been taught, and many financial experts will tell you, and I've learned it through hard knocks and just life experience, is that by tracking my expenses and doing this, I can find 20% more money. So if your household income is $50,000, that's like $10,000 more that you found that was just leaking out of your finances that now is back in there because you've separated the essential and non-essential expenses, and you have identified those things that can either be reduced or those things that could be eliminated, maybe forever, but certainly over a short period of time, so that you can get through this crisis. It does take action. Do not become paralyzed. It takes work. If it takes an hour a day, it's worth it. It's like a person chopping down a tree with a dull axe. It's worth it for him to sit down and sharpen the axe. And then that was time taken away from his working on chopping down the tree, but now he's going to make so much more progress because he did that. By planning and doing the things that I'm talking about, you can find the money and you will work smarter. And so we talked about what are the things that are truly essential and what are the things that are non-essential. And can you reduce or eliminate those non-essential? And even the things that are essential, can you find ways to make your money and your dollar stretch more? You see, every time you part with a dollar and you use it or it goes to something, Starbucks or whatever it is, you can get a new dollar back, but you're never getting this one back. And so you need to track every one because they are precious. And you need to be a good steward of all of those. So, getting into today's lesson, it's important that we, if needed, reduce or stop contributing to retirement accounts or other investment accounts. Now, this is only if there's no other way to get through this. I don't want you to stop because most people are way behind in what they need to be giving, but to get through today or the next 6 months, you may need to do that. You may need to reduce how much you're investing into your retirement account and into your 401k, RRSP in Canada, or a health savings account, or even college funds. Yes, we love those kids, but guess what? We love to eat and pay our bills right now too, and we can still love them and help them later, but you have to be able to get by today. So again, you may need to reduce, you may need to stop completely for a period of time contributing, but this is only if your back is up against the wall and you've tried everything else that I've told you and you still can't find the money. There could be money going into these that you don't have to do right now to get through the next 3 months, 6 months, or a year. If you're going to be contributing to anything, you need to contribute to an emergency fund, a savings account, which many of you have heard that you need to do that, and now you realize why. You always need to have a good fund set up. $1,000, $5,000, $10,000 for some, even $20,000 for others in a savings account. I mean, ideally it's 6 months expenses, but most people, if they even had 6 weeks, that would be good. So find the money and start putting in, because right now over the next few months you're going to find that cash is king. So the next thing you need to do, and last video there were like 4 main things under find the money, or 5 rather, and then I just hit number 6, which is reduce and stop contributing to the 401k, and number 7 is track every expense every day. You say, Pete, you've already told us that. Yeah, I'll probably tell you 5 or 6 times, because experts will tell us that by tracking every single expense every day, every time you spend money, at the end of the day, you write those things down, you are able to save 20% or reduce your spending by 20% just by tracking it, because now you know where your money goes. My wife and I, years ago, we used to carry one of these little notebooks that was maybe like this big, the size of an iPhone, that would go into your pocket. And we would have number 1 through 30, the days of the month, written in there. And each day, if we made an expense, stopped and pumped $10 worth of gas, or maybe we went to the grocery store or paid a utility bill, we would write it in there. And then at the end of each week, we would track those things and add them up and see where the money goes. Was that a necessity? Was that a necessary expense or not? But we tracked our expenses, and by doing so, all of a sudden, emergency and savings money began to build up because we were so much more careful. So track every expense. Now, there's all kinds of fancy apps for your phones and computers and things today. And you know what? If you're young and you love to do that, knock yourself out. I find that very few people that buy those apps and get them work them. The key isn't, is it fancy and is it high tech? The key is, are you working it every day? And writing it on a piece of paper and tracking it and adding them up at the end of each week, and then you know at the end of each month exactly what you paid, and you do that for 6 months, that works just fine. You see, this is work, and that's why I have these sheets in front of us with a calculator and all these things. You don't have to have fancy apps. There are some. You can go to Dave Ramsey sites. There's a guy by the name of Joe Sangl, S-A-N-G-L. There's all kinds of people. Ron Blue. You can get on the internet and find all kinds of, just Google if you want to, best tracking apps for your expenses. But here's the thing. Almost nobody uses them. Almost nobody actually puts those into practice. So the key is doing it. And if that's what you like, great, as long as you work it. But track every expense. Next, number 8, move high interest credit card balances to 0 credit card balances. Do you know that while you're paying 13, 15, 21% in interest on your credit card, there are credit cards out there that you can transfer the balance to, that you can pay 0% interest for 6 months or a year? What would that actually save you? So there are ways to do that. And as part of the material, we're going to make available to you a lot of the things that I've talked about, like the budget and that 0% credit card balances. And I'm going to have a site through the church that you're going to be able to go through, either your pastor, district superintendent, or headquarters of the Wesleyan Church. If it's a Wesleyan Church group that's watching this, then we're going to make that available to you. But there's a list of cards, and you may be able to transfer that over. The key is you need not to be carrying a balance in the future anyway. It's a bad idea. It's a bad use of money. It's a waste of interest and money that you're paying that is going down the drain. If you had an emergency fund, that money would be what you used instead of carrying a balance on your credit card. If you can have a credit card and not carry a balance for months and years and decades, good. I'm fine with that. But you need to make sure that you have way more in the bank than you would ever have at the end of the month due, that you can now pay that off, and most people don't. So the next one is, folks, sell stuff. It's not just reducing the outgo, it's increasing the income. And one of the things that we all have is unused stuff laying around the house that you can get rid of on Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, in Canada, Kijiji, whatever the site happens to be. Do you need that extra car after all? I know people who get by with just one or none. What about that four-wheeler? Is that an essential or non-essential item? Sell unused things like treadmills. Purging can feel good. Get rid of all those things that may get you $50, $100, $200, and it all adds up, and guess what? You're a lot less cluttered and a lot less dependent on stuff. In times of crisis, you need to take drastic steps, and one of those is sell stuff. And maybe it's you have too expensive a car and it needs to be reduced. I learned how to pay cash for cars in 1984 on a very, 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 very low income with a family of 5. And I paid cash for cars and saved the money for the next one. Now, it was an $800, not much of a car, but it got us by 2 years. We laid hands on it, we prayed for it, we did everything imaginable to keep it running, and it did for 2 years. And we saved up the money and upgraded a little bit to the next one that we could afford with cash. And then we would save the money that would go into a car payment, and then we would do it again, and we've done that since 1984. And most of those first 15 to 20 years, our income was very, very low. What you need to be able to get to work, you need transportation, but not necessarily the transportation you have. Most people buy a car, in my opinion, that they can't really afford. The payments tell them that they can, but most people, not just cars, but majority of Canadians and Americans have learned how to live above their means, and someday it catches up, whether it's not enough money saved for retirement or whatever it is. So then, how about this? Get rid of that storage facility. It's amazing what we'll pay, $50, $100 a month or more to store stuff that we haven't looked at in 36 months. Get rid of it. You don't need it anymore. Get rid of that expense. Sell the stuff that's in it and eliminate the expense. The next one, could a hobby become an income stream? Are you good at baking? And could you make a few $100s on every weekend by selling your baking goods? How about sewing masks, the coronavirus masks? We know someone, a friend of ours, that has done this, and guess what? They were able to pay off their cell phone bill and some other bills. They could earn a few $100s a month just by finding a way to make their time useful instead of just watching Netflix or worrying about their finances. What about computer skills? Maybe you could sell that skill to somebody. Teaching guitar online. There's all kinds of things that you are skilled at that maybe you can pick up. $50, $100, maybe even more. How about this? Ask your employer for extra hours at work. Show that you are motivated to do extra. And maybe there are some things that could be done. We have somebody at our work who has taken advantage of that opportunity. How about seeking evening and weekend work? Do you know that a lot of the restaurants are still looking for drivers? And they can make decent money. How about landscaping? If you do your own, how about going through your neighborhood and saying, hey, at a reduced rate, I'll do your landscaping, I'll do your lawn care. How about grocery delivery? The delivery dudes here in the United States. How about renting out a room or two in your home to a boarder? Now, right now, because of social distancing, that may not be that great, but in the near future, you may be able to do that. I remember when my wife and I were going to college, we had an opportunity for someone to board with us, a teacher at the college, and it really saved us as far as our monthly rent. It was just a gift from God as we were praying. God laid it in our lap, an opportunity. And then how about this? Advertise your services that you want to and how you want to earn income in your neighborhood. How about painting? Again, lawn care, cleaning houses, website work. These are the kind of things that motivated people do to get by. Extreme situations cause for extreme measures. I love this next one. How about the barter system? Do you need to buy all the things you buy, or could you trade with somebody else? Maybe you have something that they could use, a tiller for the garden or some other piece of equipment, and then you go back and forth. But I love this too. What about childcare? Daily or weekly? That you take turns. That maybe you need an evening out, but you can't spare the expense. And maybe you volunteer to keep someone else's children so they get a night out, and then vice versa. Trips to the grocery store, ride share. Again, the barter system can still work. There are people that don't need to own one of everything, just like you, and you can go back and forth. And you have something to give them, they can have something to lend to you, and work it out that way. A lot of the things that we think that we need sit idle in our home 364 days a year. They're hardly ever used. And you're paying top dollar for those things. So again, this is a long list of ways to reduce the outgo and increase the income. And if you do 1, 2, 3, 5, 7 of these things, and even in a small way, sometimes in a big way, all of a sudden $100 here and $100 there comes back into the fold, and you are able to make it. And again, I end this video where I started. Don't stop praying. God cares. God's promises are true, and His book is true, and what it says about finances and money and the things that we apply are still true today. They work. God is a generous God, and He cares deeply about you. And so pray about them, be a good steward, apply the things we've talked about. And again, I think the key to all of this is taking action. Not to, bury yourself in your favorite chair in the house and watch Netflix or some other show hour after hour because you don't know what to do. That's paralysis and panic. Instead, put that to the side and pray and be productive. You can do it. I believe in you, but you got to take action. Let's start right now.